Today on Rippvids, we're going to show you how to replace a cam follower on a 2-liter FSI engine. This vehicle specifically is a 2007 Model A3, which will have the barbed hose fitting, as opposed to the banjo bolt fitting. Before doing this, take your time getting out your tools, wait about 20 minutes to 30 minutes, and be sure to pop open the fuel cap just to relieve some extra pressure. Start by getting out your flathead screwdriver and pop off the mass airflow sensor. This tip actually goes for all of the Audi and Volkswagen electrical connectors. You want to lift the clip and push in the connector to fully unclip, and then it should slide right off. Next, take off this hose by unclipping the 2 securing clamps. Next, get out your 25mm Torx and take off the 2 bolts connecting to the airbox to the intake duct and unhook it. Lift the airbox from the left and right side, rock it a bit, and give it a lot of force to release it from the rubber grommets. Now we can get to work on our fuel pump. First, get the 2 electrical connectors off of the fuel pump. This will prevent the fuel pump from pumping fuel while you release the pressure from the schrader valve. And take off the hose on the PCV system while you're at it. These hoses unclip from 2 sides on this ring. Once you get one side unclipped, keep it rocked over to prevent it from clipping back in place, and then undo the second clip. Pull it off and then swing it to the side. Now take a rag or a towel and use a pick or a screwdriver to release the fuel pressure from the schrader valve. Some fuel will come out with the pressure. Now that we've bled all the pressure out of the pump, take off the schrader valve by moving it counterclockwise. Use a 13mm crescent wrench or a deep well socket if you have one. And with the schrader valve out of the way, now we can access the bottom bolt. So now get your T30 Torx and crack loose the 3 bolts. And next, get out your hose clamp pliers and bring down the clamp to relieve that barb fitting. If you can get it off, then good for you. I left mine on, as you'll see later. For this nut, get out your 17mm wrench and take that off as well. Now just take the fuel pump off. Remove the cam follower with your finger and inspect the follower and the cam lobe. Use a pick tool to remove the rubber O-ring on the fuel pump. When installing the new O-ring, make sure you put some oil on it to ensure a good seal. Apply some assembly lube on the back of the follower before installing. This will make sure that the first contact with the follower and the cam does not damage the cam lobe, and will actually increase the life of the follower. Place the new follower in and make sure that it's seated all the way. I purchased the stud conversion kit from Deutsche Auto Parts, so I'll be installing that right now. You might want the stud kit if you are planning on changing the follower often, or is to not risk stripping the internals. For the stud conversion kit, use a 10mm socket on the nut to tighten the stud all the way down. When it's all the way tight, use a pair of locking grip pliers to hold it in its tight position while you remove the nut. Put the fuel pump back on from the bottom bolt first. If you're like me and didn't get the hose off, then this might take some convincing. Try turning the pump and attacking it from an angle. Now get your hose secured back on the barb fitting. Then put the nuts on the studs. Using a socket will speed this up, but you will need to use a 10mm wrench to tighten them up all the way. The torque specs for these nuts is kind of tight. Put the hardline hose nut back on. The torque spec for this is, kinda tight. Resecure your electrical connectors and your PCV system. And if you loosen the rubber grommet for the engine cover, tighten that back into place as well. It takes a 30mm Torx. Make sure you double check your connectors and your fittings. And now you're clear to put the airbox back on. The engine may not fire up the first time you go for it. Let it crank more than usual to get the fuel back in the system, and then let her rip.